My husband and son called me a useless old woman. But what happened next shocked them both. I'm Margaret. I'm 70 years old. 3 months ago, I overheard a conversation I was never meant to hear. My husband Richard and my son David were talking in the dining room. About me, about how I contributed nothing. How I was just an old woman taking up space. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to the two most important men in my life discuss me like I was a problem they needed to solve. For 50 years, I'd been a homemaker, raised my son, took care of my first husband through his illness, remarried after he passed, thinking I'd found companionship for my later years. I'd spent my entire life taking care of other people, and this was how they saw me, useless. What they didn't know was that everything was about to change. That the woman they dismissed was about to surprise them in ways they never imagined. Before I tell you how I got here, I need to know you're listening. Drop your city or country in the comments, and please subscribe for real stories about women who discovered their strength at every age. I married my first husband in 1975. Stopped working when our son was born. That was normal back then, expected. When my husband died in 2005, I was 50 and alone. No career, no income, just trying to survive. Richard seemed like an answer when I met him 5 years later. Financially secure, retired, looking for companionship. I thought I'd found safety for my golden years. Instead, I found myself invisible again, dismissed, overlooked. Just another old woman in the background of someone else's life, until something happened that changed everything. Something Richard and David knew nothing about. Something that would teach them both a lesson about underestimating a 70-year-old woman. Stay with me, because what comes next, they never saw it coming. I met Tom in 1974 at a church social in Columbus, Ohio. I was 19, working as a receptionist at a dental office. He was 22, fresh out of Ohio State, working at his father's insurance agency. He was kind, steady, the kind of man my mother called good husband material. We married in June 1975 at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Small ceremony. My mother made my dress. Tom's father paid for the reception at the VFW Hall. We honeymooned at Niagara Falls, 3 days. Then came home to a small rental house on the west side of Columbus. I kept working at the dental office. Tom worked long hours at the agency. We were building a life, saving for a house, planning for children. Doing what young couples did in 1975, my best friend Carol got married the same year. We'd been friends since high school. She married Mike, Tom's college roommate. We did everything together. Double dates, Sunday dinners, dreaming about the families we'd raise. We'll have kids the same age, Carol said. They'll grow up together, be best friends like us. That was the dream, the life we'd planned. David was born in March 1977. I was 21 years old. The moment they placed him in my arms, everything changed. He was perfect, beautiful, mine. Tom's mother Grace came to help those first weeks. She'd raised 4 boys, knew everything about babies, but her help came with criticism. You're holding him too much. You'll spoil him. Breast milk isn't enough. He needs formula too. Why are you so tired? I raised 4 and never complained. Tom never defended me. Just said, Mom means well. She's trying to help. But it didn't feel like help. It felt like judgment, like everything I did was wrong. I quit my job at the dental office when David was 3 months old. We couldn't afford childcare on my salary. It made more financial sense for me to stay home. That's what Tom said. That's what his mother said. That's what everyone said. So I became a stay-at-home mother. At 21, in a rental house on the west side of Columbus, with a baby and a husband who worked 60 hours a week. Carol quit her job too when her daughter Amy was born in 1978. We'd meet at the park, our kids playing, us talking about exhaustion, loneliness, the strange invisibility of being home all day with small children. Is this it? Carol asked one afternoon. We were at Goodale Park. The kids were on swings. We were drinking lukewarm coffee from thermoses. What do you mean? This, being home. Raising kids. Waiting for our husbands to come home and acknowledge we exist. Is this all there is? It gets better. When they're older. Does it? My mother did this for 30 years. She doesn't seem happy. Just tired. I didn't know what to say, because I was tired too. And lonely, and starting to wonder the same thing. We bought a house in 1982. 3 bedrooms in Clintonville. A neighborhood with good schools, a small backyard, a mortgage that took most of Tom's paycheck. We'll be house poor for a while, Tom said. But it's an investment. Building equity. I painted David's room blue, set up a small sewing area in the basement, tried to make the house feel like home. But mostly it felt like a place where I waited. For Tom to come home, for David to need me, for my life to feel like it meant something. My mother visited often. She'd raised 3 daughters, stayed home her whole life, seemed content with it, or at least resigned to it. This is what women do, Margaret. We take care of our families. That's our purpose. But what about us? What about what we want? What we want doesn't matter as much as what our families need. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be. I tried to accept it. Tried to find purpose in grocery shopping and laundry and making sure Tom had clean shirts for work. But acceptance felt more like surrender. Carol and I stayed close through the 80s. Our kids were friends, David and Amy. We'd have play dates, coffee, conversations about how tired we were, how invisible we felt. Mike doesn't even see me anymore, Carol said one morning in 1987. We were at my kitchen table. The kids were at school. She was crying. He comes home, eats dinner, watches TV, goes to bed, never asks about my day, never notices I exist. Tom's the same. I could disappear and he'd only notice when there's no dinner. Is this really what the rest of our lives looks like? I didn't answer, because I was afraid the answer was yes. David grew up, elementary school, middle school, high school. He was a good kid, smart, athletic, popular, my whole world. Tom worked. Came home, watched sports. Mowed the lawn on Saturdays. Went to David's games sometimes. Was a fine husband. Not great. Not terrible. Just fine. Fine became my life. A fine house. A fine marriage. A fine son. Everything fine and nothing extraordinary. In 1998, David left for Ohio State. 18 years old. Moving into a dorm. Starting his own life. And I was 43. Empty nest. No job. No identity beyond being Tom's wife and David's mother. Now what? I asked Tom the day we dropped David off. What do you mean? David's gone. What do we do now? Just the 2 of us? We enjoy our lives. Relax. We've earned it. But I didn't feel like I'd earned anything. I felt like I'd disappeared into other people's lives, and now there was nothing left of me. Carol got divorced in 2001, after 26 years of marriage. Mike had been having an affair with a woman from his office. Carol was 51, suddenly single, terrified. I have no job skills, she told me. We were at Bob Evans. She was devastated, lost. I've been home for 30 years. Who's going to hire me? What am I supposed to do? You'll figure it out. You're smart, capable. I'm old and useless. And Mike gets to start over with someone younger, while I get to figure out how to survive on whatever the court gives me. I held her hand, told her she'd be okay. But inside I was terrified too, because if it could happen to Carol, it could happen to me. One day your husband decides you're not enough, and everything you sacrificed means nothing. Tom got sick in 2003, colon cancer, stage 3. He was 52. I was 48. We fought it. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, 2 years of hospitals and treatments, and hope followed by disappointment. I took care of him. Drove him to appointments, held his hand, watched him fade. David came home when it got bad, took leave from his job in Cleveland, sat with his father, watched me care for the man who'd been the center of our lives for 30 years. Tom died in September 2005, 54 years old. We'd been married 30 years. I was 50, widowed, alone. The life insurance was small, $25,000. The house had equity but still had a mortgage. Social Security wouldn't start for years. I had no career, no recent work experience, no way to support myself. David was 28, had his own life in Cleveland, his own career. He called every week, visited once a month, but he couldn't take care of me. I was on my own. Carol helped me through those first months. She'd rebuilt her life after divorce, found a job at a call center, wasn't making much but was surviving. She showed me it was possible. You're stronger than you think, Margaret. You raised a son, took care of a dying husband. You can do this, but I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. 50 years old, alone, with no idea how to take care of myself. Those 5 years between Tom's death and meeting Richard were the hardest of my life. Working part-time at Target, barely making mortgage payments, wondering if this was it. If I'd spend the rest of my life struggling alone. When I met Richard in 2010, he seemed like a miracle. Security, companionship, a second chance. I had no idea I was walking into another 30 years of being invisible, of being useful only when I was serving someone else, of slowly disappearing until I was just an old woman taking up space. But I'd learn, eventually. And when I did, everything would change. I met Richard in the spring of 2010 at a grief support group at St. Stephen's Lutheran Church in Columbus. I'd been going for 3 months, trying to process Tom's death, trying to figure out how to move forward. Richard was there for the same reason. His wife had died 2 years earlier, breast cancer. He was 61, retired, living alone in a big house in Upper Arlington. He seemed kind, gentle, lost in the same way I was lost. We started having coffee after the meetings, talking about our spouses, our loneliness, the strange experience of being single again after decades of marriage. He was easy to talk to, didn't make me feel judged, seemed to genuinely listen. I don't know how to be alone, I told him one afternoon. We were at a Panera on Lane Avenue. I've been taking care of someone my whole life. First my son, then Tom, now there's just me. And I don't even know who I am, I understand. My whole identity was built around being someone's husband. Barbara's husband. Now I'm just Richard, and I'm not sure what that means. That shared understanding felt like connection, like maybe we could help each other figure out this next chapter. Carol was skeptical when I told her I was seeing someone. Already? Tom's only been gone 5 years. I'm lonely. Richard is lonely. We're just keeping each other company. Be careful, Margaret. Lonely people make desperate decisions. Make sure you're doing this because you want to, not because you're afraid to be alone. But I was afraid to be alone, terrified, and Richard felt safe, stable, like a solution to all my problems. We got married in October 2010. Small ceremony at the courthouse. Just us and a few friends. David came down from Cleveland. Seemed happy I'd found someone. Said he'd been worried about me living alone. Richard seems like a good guy, Mom. Financially stable. You won't have to worry about money anymore. Money. That's what everyone focused on. Not love, not companionship, just security. The practical benefit of not being alone. Richard sold his house in Upper Arlington. I sold my house in Clintonville. We bought a ranch home together in Worthington. Nice neighborhood. Good schools, even though neither of us had kids at home. 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage. A yard Richard could putter in. This is our fresh start, Richard said the day we moved in. New house, new life, new chapter. It felt like a fresh start those first few years. Richard was attentive. Took me to dinner, movies, weekend trips to Hocking Hills and Cedar Point. He seemed to enjoy having someone to share his retirement with, but slowly, things shifted. Small things at first, the way he'd make decisions without asking me. Where we'd eat, what we'd do on weekends, how we'd spend holidays. I made reservations at Hyde Park for Saturday, he'd announce. I was thinking we could try that new Italian place. Hyde Park is better. You'll like it, and that would be that. My preferences didn't matter. Richard knew best. His friends became our friends. Bob and Janet from the golf club. Pete and Susan from his old business networking group. They were nice enough, but they were his people. Not mine. I smiled. Made small talk. Felt like an accessory to Richard's social life. Carol noticed when we'd meet for lunch. You seem different. Quieter. I'm fine. Just adjusting to married life again. Margaret, you were married for 30 years. You know what married life looks like. This seems like something else. Richard just has strong opinions. He's used to living alone, making his own decisions. It's an adjustment for both of you. Not just for you, but it felt like I was the only one adjusting, molding myself around Richard's life. His preferences, his routine, again. David visited a few times a year, holidays, special occasions. He and Richard got along well, too well. They'd sit in the living room talking about business, investments, money, things I knew nothing about. Your stepfather is very successful, David told me one Thanksgiving. We were in the kitchen. I was making pies. David was supposedly helping, but mostly watching. He did well in commercial real estate before he retired. He's smart. Really knows his stuff. I've been asking him for advice on my investments. That's nice. He says you never had a head for money. That Tom handled all that and now he does. I stopped rolling pie dough. He said that? Yeah, just that you're more of a homemaker, not really interested in financial stuff. Which is fine, Mom. Not everyone needs to be good at everything. Not interested. That's how Richard framed it. Not that he'd never included me in financial decisions. Not that he made me feel stupid when I asked questions. Just that I wasn't interested. By 2015, I was 60 years old, retired from my part-time job at Target, living entirely on Richard's retirement income and Social Security. Financially dependent. Again, my sister Linda called from Phoenix on my 60th birthday. She'd moved to Arizona in the 90s. We talked every few months. She'd never married, had a career as a nurse, owned her own condo, built a life that was entirely hers. How's married life? She asked. It's fine. Margaret, you always say fine. Is it actually fine, or are you just saying that? What do you want me to say? Richard takes care of me. I have a nice home. I'm not struggling financially. That's more than a lot of women my age have. But are you happy? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't happy. But I wasn't unhappy enough to complain. Just existing, again, in someone else's life. David got a promotion in 2016. Big job. More money. He was 39. Doing well. Making me proud. He'd call every week. But the conversations changed. Less about his life. More about money. About Richard's success. About investments and retirement accounts. Richard's really taken you under his wing, I said during one call. He's been great, Mom. Like the father figure I needed. Dad was wonderful, but he never really understood business. Richard gets it, the father figure I needed. As if Tom hadn't been enough. As if Richard was somehow better, superior. Richard encouraged it. Would invite David down for golf weekends. Just the two of them. They'd talk business, strategy, man stuff. I'd make them meals, clean up after them, be the woman in the background supporting the important men. Carol got remarried in 2017 to a man she'd met at work, quiet, kind, nothing like Mike. They were planning to travel, see the country, do all the things Carol never got to do in her first marriage. I'm finally living for me, she told me. We were at her small wedding reception at a local restaurant. 20 people, simple, happy. Not for a husband who didn't appreciate me. Not for kids who are grown. For me, I was happy for her. Jealous too, because I'd gone from one marriage where I was invisible to another where I was just as invisible. Different man. Same feeling. By 2018, Richard was 70 and slowing down. Still active, but complaining more. His knees hurt. His back ached. He needed more help with things. Yard work. Heavy lifting, organizing. I became his caretaker. Again. Making sure he took his medications. Driving him to doctor appointments. Managing his schedule. Just like I'd done with Tom. You're so good at taking care of people, Richard's friend Bob said one afternoon. The guys were over watching a football game. I was bringing snacks, drinks, being hostess. It's what I do, I said. Richard's lucky to have you. A wife who knows her role, who takes care of things without complaining. My role, taking care of things. Not being a partner, not being valued, just fulfilling a function. David started calling Richard instead of me. When he needed advice, when he had news, when he wanted to share something, he'd call Richard. Then maybe mention, "Oh, tell Mom I said hi." An afterthought. That's what I'd become. In my own son's life, Richard's attitude changed too. More dismissive, more condescending, especially in front of others. Margaret doesn't really understand technology, he'd say when I asked about our new smart TV. Isn't that right, honey? You're more comfortable with simple things. Margaret's not interested in politics, he'd announce when his friends were discussing current events. Never mind that I read the news every day. Never mind that I had opinions. I just wasn't interested. By 2020, I was 65. Richard was 73. We'd been married 10 years. And I was more invisible than I'd ever been. Not a wife, not a partner, just the woman who lived in Richard's house and took care of Richard's needs. David was 43, successful, making good money. Talking to Richard constantly about investments and business. Barely talking to me at all. My mother died in March 2020. She was 89, had lived a long life. I flew to Cleveland for the funeral, sat with my sisters Linda and Patricia, processed our grief together. What was it all for? Patricia asked. We were at the reception after the funeral, drinking bad coffee, eating grocery store cookies. Mom spent 60 years taking care of Dad, raised 3 daughters. And for what? So she could die in a nursing home with Dad barely visiting? She was happy, Linda said. But she didn't sound convinced, was she? Or was she just resigned? There's a difference. I thought about that a lot in the months after. The difference between happy and resigned. Between choosing a life and accepting one, I was resigned. Had been for decades. This was just how life was for women like me. Women who'd chosen family over career, security over independence. We made our beds. Now we lay in them. But lying in that bed was getting harder. More suffocating. More like slowly disappearing until there was nothing left. I just didn't know how to change it. Didn't know if change was even possible at 65. Didn't know if I had any power left at all. I'd find out soon enough, in the most unexpected way possible. The pandemic changed everything in strange ways. Richard and I were locked down together in that house in Worthington for months. Nowhere to go. Nothing to do but exist in the same space. I thought it might bring us closer. All that time together. But it did the opposite. Richard became more irritable, more critical, more obvious about how little he valued me. Can you be quiet? I'm on a Zoom call with David. Why didn't you make lunch yet? It's already noon. Stop hovering. Go do something useful. David called Richard every few days during lockdown. Business calls, investment discussions, father-son bonding over portfolios and market trends. He'd talk to Richard for an hour, then maybe ask to say hi to me for 5 minutes. How are you, Mom? I'm fine. How are you handling everything in Cleveland? Good, working from home. Richard's been giving me great advice on where to invest right now. He really knows his stuff. That's nice. Anyway, I should go. Tell Richard I'll call him Thursday. Love you, and that was it. 5 minutes. Squeezed in between the important conversations with Richard. Carol called me often during lockdown. We'd talk for hours. About everything and nothing. About fear and loneliness and feeling trapped in our own homes. How's it going with Richard? She asked one afternoon in May 2020. The same. Maybe worse. We're together all the time now. I can't escape? Escape? Margaret, that's a terrible word to use about your marriage. I know, but that's how it feels. Like I'm trapped. You don't have to be trapped. You could leave and go where? I'm 65 years old, Carol. I have no money of my own. No job. No options. You have Social Security. You'd get something in a divorce. You have options. You just don't see them. Maybe she was right. But seeing options and having the courage to use them were different things. My Aunt Josephine called in June 2021. My father's older sister. She was 92, living in a retirement community in Sarasota, Florida. We'd always been close. She'd never married, no children, had worked her whole life as a librarian, saved everything, lived simply. Margaret, dear, how are you? I'm well, Aunt Jo. How are you feeling? Old, she laughed. Very old. Listen, I'm updating my will, making sure everything is in order. I wanted to talk to you about something. Of course. I'm leaving you everything. The condo, my savings, my investments. All of it. I almost dropped the phone. Aunt Jo, that's too much. What about Linda and Patricia? Your sisters are doing fine. Linda has her career. Patricia's husband is wealthy. You're the one who sacrificed everything to take care of others. You're the one who deserves security. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it to take care of yourself. Not Richard. Not David. Yourself. Promise me. I promise. But I didn't think much about it. Aunt Jo was 92 and healthy, sharp as ever. I figured she'd live another 10 years. That inheritance was theoretical, distant, not something to plan around. Life continued. Richard got more dismissive. David called less. I became smaller, quieter, more like furniture in my own home. My sister Linda visited from Phoenix in October 2021, stayed a week. Saw how Richard treated me, how he spoke to me, how he made me feel small. Margaret, why do you put up with this? Put up with what? The way he talks to you. Like you're stupid, like you don't matter. That's just Richard. He doesn't mean anything by it. Yes, he does. And you deserve better. I'm 66 years old, Linda. This is my life. I'm too old to change it. You're never too old. Look at me. I'm 64 and just bought a new condo. Started taking painting classes. Joined a book club. Life doesn't end at 60. Unless you let it. Her words stayed with me. Life doesn't end at 60. Unless you let it. Had I let it end? Had I given up without even realizing it? By 2022, Richard was 77. His health was declining. Diabetes, high blood pressure, arthritis in his knees. He needed more help, more care. More from me. I became his full-time caretaker. Monitoring his blood sugar, making sure he took 14 different medications, driving him to endless doctor appointments, cooking special diabetic meals, managing everything. This is what wives do, Richard said when I looked exhausted. Take care of their husbands. Barbara did it for me before she got sick. Now you do it, Barbara? His first wife. The standard I could never meet. She'd been a saint, according to Richard. Patient, loving, never complained. Unlike me, who apparently complained constantly by simply existing. David visited for Thanksgiving 2022, first time in 2 years. He was 45 now, successful, well-dressed, confident, looked at me like I was a stranger. You look tired, Mom. I am tired. Taking care of Richard is exhausting. That's what you signed up for. Marriage, in sickness and in health. I know. I just wish it was more of a partnership, more mutual care. Richard took care of you financially for 12 years. Now you take care of him physically. Seems fair. Took care of me financially, as if I was a burden he'd shouldered. As if I contributed nothing. As if 12 years of cooking and cleaning and managing a household counted for nothing. That's when I realized. David didn't just see me the way Richard saw me. He saw me the way I taught him to see me, as someone whose value was only in serving others. Someone with no inherent worth beyond usefulness. And I'd done that, by being invisible my whole life. By never demanding respect, by accepting less and less, until there was almost nothing left. Christmas 2022 was quiet. Just Richard and me. David was in Cleveland with friends. Didn't even call until December 27th, a courtesy call, making sure we were alive. Carol came over the day after Christmas, brought wine, cookies, sat with me in my kitchen while Richard napped in his recliner. You're disappearing, Margaret. I can see it. You're fading. I'm just tired. You're more than tired. You're giving up, letting them treat you like you don't matter. Like you're just the woman who serves and cleans and takes care of everyone else. What am I supposed to do? Leave at 67? Start over with nothing? You don't have nothing. You have yourself. That's more than nothing. But it didn't feel like more than nothing. It felt like exactly nothing. Then, in February 2024, everything changed. Aunt Josephine died, peacefully, in her sleep, at 95 years old. I flew to Florida for the funeral. Small service. Just me, a few friends from her retirement community, her lawyer. Her lawyer pulled me aside after the service. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Robert Garcia. I handled your aunt's estate. We need to discuss her will, of course. When would be convenient? Now, if possible. There are some things you should know before you return to Ohio. We sat in his office. He pulled out documents, handed me papers, started explaining. Aunt Josephine had been far wealthier than anyone knew. The condo in Sarasota was paid off, worth $600,000. She had investments, stocks, bonds, a portfolio she'd built over 60 years of working and saving. Total estate value, $8 million. And she'd left every penny to me. I sat in that lawyer's office in Sarasota, Florida, staring at numbers I couldn't process. $8 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. More than Richard had. More than I'd thought existed in our family. Mrs. Thompson, are you all right? I'm fine. Just shocked. Your aunt was very clear about her wishes. Everything to you, in a trust that only you control. Your husband has no legal claim to it. She was very specific about that. Of course she was. Aunt Jo had always seen clearly, had always known I needed protection. Even from my own family. I flew back to Columbus the next day. Didn't tell Richard about the inheritance. Didn't tell David. Just came home to that house in Worthington and kept serving, kept being invisible, kept letting them treat me like I was worthless. But now I had a secret, a weapon, $8 million they knew nothing about, power they didn't know I possessed. I just needed the right moment to use it, the final insult that would give me the courage to walk away. That moment came on January 10th, 2025, a Thursday evening, when I stood in the hallway and heard my husband and my son discuss me like I was a problem that needed solving, and everything changed. December 2024 started like any other December. Cold, gray. The holiday season looming with all its expectations and obligations. I'd been keeping Aunt Josephine's inheritance secret for 10 months. $8 million sitting in accounts Richard knew nothing about. Money that was mine, only mine. Protected in a trust with my name on it. Some days I'd log into the account just to look at the numbers, to remind myself they were real, that I had options, that I wasn't as trapped as I felt, but I hadn't used those options. Hadn't done anything except continue being the invisible woman in Richard's house, making his meals, managing his medications, existing in the background of his life. Why haven't you left yet? Carol asked when we met for coffee at a Starbucks in Graceland. It was the week before Christmas. The mall was crowded. People rushing around buying gifts. I don't know. Fear, maybe? Habit. 70 years of being trained to put everyone else first. Margaret, you have $8 million. You could leave today, buy your own house, live anywhere you want, do anything you want. What do I want? That's the question I can't answer. I've spent so long being what everyone else needed that I don't even know who I am. Then maybe it's time to find out. Richard's health had stabilized somewhat. Still needed medication management. Still had doctor appointments. But he was mobile, active, playing golf with his buddies. Living his life while I facilitated it. David called Richard on December 15th. I heard them on speakerphone in the living room. Making plans for the holidays. I can't make it for Christmas this year, Richard. Work is crazy, but I'll come down for New Year's weekend. We can play golf. Talk strategy for 2025. Sounds good. Your mother will be happy to see you. Yeah. Tell Mom I'll call her later. But he didn't call later. Didn't call at all. Just assumed Richard would pass along the message. Like I was a secretary. Someone to receive messages, but not worthy of direct communication. Christmas morning was just Richard and me. We exchanged small gifts. I gave him a sweater. He gave me a coffee mug from the CVS pharmacy. Still had the clearance sticker on it. $2.99. I didn't really know what to get you, he said. You're hard to shop for. You don't really want anything? I didn't want anything because I'd learned not to want. Learned that wanting led to disappointment. Better to expect nothing than to be hurt when nothing was what you got. Carol invited me to her house for Christmas dinner. Her husband Steve was cooking. Their kids were coming. Real family. Real warmth. Real love. I can't. Richard expects dinner here. Bring Richard. He won't come. Says your house is too small. Too crowded. Too loud. Then come without him. I can't do that. Yes, you can. You just won't. She was right. I wouldn't. Because leaving Richard alone on Christmas felt wrong. Even though he'd leave me alone without a second thought if his golf buddies invited him somewhere. David arrived on December 30th. Drove down from Cleveland. Came in talking about traffic and work and how tired he was. Hugged me briefly. Shook Richard's hand. Settled into the guest room like it was a hotel. That evening we had dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of comfort food David loved. I'd spent all afternoon cooking, making everything perfect. This is great, Mom. You're a good cook. Thank you, sweetheart. She should be good at it by now, Richard said. It's all she does. Cook and clean. 70 years of practice, David laughed. Not meanly, just casually. Like Richard had made a joke instead of an insult. That's true. Mom, you've perfected the domestic arts. The rest of us are out here working. You're here making pot roast. The rest of us are working. As if what I did wasn't work. As if 50 years of cooking and cleaning and raising a child and caring for 2 husbands was somehow less than sitting in an office. I didn't respond. Just cleared plates, brought dessert, smiled, played my role. Later that evening, December 30th, around 8 p.m., I was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. I could hear Richard and David in the dining room, talking, laughing, having the kind of conversation they never included me in. Then I heard my name. I stopped loading dishes, stood still, listened. I'm worried about her, Richard. That was David's voice. Your mother? Why? She's getting old, forgetful. I called her 3 times last week and she didn't answer. Then when I finally got her, she didn't even remember I'd called. That was a lie. David had called once, I'd answered. We'd talked for 5 minutes before he said he had to go. She's 70, Richard said. That's what happens. People get old, get forgetful, get useless. That word hung in the air, I know. But what do we do about it? She can't take care of this house much longer. Can't take care of you the way she used to. I've been thinking about that. There's a nice assisted living facility in Dublin, Brookdale. Very nice, clean, professional staff. My heart stopped. They were talking about putting me in a home. That's expensive though, isn't it? Very, probably $6,000 a month. Maybe more. Can you afford that? Not easily. But if we sold this house, there'd be equity. Probably clear 400,000. That would cover a few years at Brookdale. And after that, Medicaid takes over. Sell the house. My house, the one I'd helped buy, the one I'd maintained, the one I'd made into a home. They wanted to sell it to put me in a facility. What about her Social Security? Her savings? She doesn't have savings. Never worked enough to build anything. Her Social Security barely covers her personal expenses. No, if we're going to do this, we'll need the house equity. David was quiet for a moment. Then, would you move into something smaller? An apartment, maybe? I was thinking I'd move into a condo. 2 bedrooms, something manageable. And you'd visit whenever you wanted. Have a place to stay when you're in town. So basically, we sell Mom's house to put her in a home and you get a condo out of it? We both benefit. You'd have the peace of mind knowing your mother is being cared for. I'd have a more manageable living situation. She'd be in a place designed for old women who can't function independently anymore. Old women who can't function independently. That's how he saw me. That's how they both saw me. She's not going to like this, David said. She doesn't have to like it. She's becoming a burden, David. To me. To herself. This is the responsible thing to do. The kind thing, even. She just won't see it that way because she's stubborn. When would we do this? Soon, maybe spring. Give her time to adjust to the idea. We'll frame it as being for her own good. Her own safety. We'll be the caring husband and son looking out for her. They were quiet then. I heard ice clinking in glasses. The sound of the TV turning on. A football game. I stood in my kitchen, dish towel in my hands, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what I'd just heard. My husband and my son had just planned to take my house, put me in a facility, divide up my life like I was already dead, and they'd convinced themselves they were doing it out of kindness. I walked upstairs, went to my bedroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, useless old woman. That's what Richard had called me. That's what David had agreed I was becoming. Useless. A burden. Someone who needed to be managed, handled, put away. I thought about Aunt Josephine. About the inheritance she'd left me specifically, so I wouldn't be helpless. So I wouldn't be at the mercy of people who saw me as disposable. I thought about Carol's words. You have $8 million. You could leave today. I thought about my mother. About Linda. About Patricia. About all the women who'd spent their lives serving others and ended up invisible, dismissed, called useless when they'd given everything. And I thought about the pot roast I'd made. The house I'd cleaned. The 70 years of making myself small so other people could feel big. I was done. Finally, completely, irreversibly done. I pulled out my phone. Called my sister Linda in Phoenix. It was 6 p.m. there. She answered on the second ring. Margaret? What's wrong? I need a lawyer. A good one. Someone who handles divorce and elder law and knows how to destroy men who underestimate 70-year-old women. What happened? Richard and David just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They called me useless. Planned to put me in a home and sell my house. They think I'm helpless, forgettable, someone they can just dispose of. Are you okay? No, but I will be. Because they don't know about Aunt Jo's money. They don't know I have $8 million. They think I'm trapped, powerless, an old woman with no options. Margaret, I'm so proud of you right now. Don't be proud yet. Be proud when I'm done with them. Can you find me a lawyer? I'll make some calls. I have a friend in Columbus, Angela Rodriguez. She's a shark, specializes in exactly this kind of thing. Get me her number. I'm meeting with her this week. What are you going to do? I'm going to show my husband and my son what happens when you call a woman useless. When you underestimate her, when you forget that she's a person with value and power and rights. They're going to regret this. Yes, I said. They are. I hung up. Sat in my bedroom, and for the first time in 70 years, I felt powerful. Not scared. Not invisible. Powerful. Tomorrow I'd start planning. I'd contact lawyers. I'd prepare to leave. I'd begin the process of reclaiming my life. But tonight, I sat in my room and smiled. Because downstairs, Richard and David were watching football, confident in their plans, certain of their control. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that the useless old woman they'd just dismissed had more money than both of them combined. No idea that she was about to change their lives forever, and I couldn't wait to see their faces when they found out. January the 2nd. I woke up early. Richard and David were still asleep. The house was quiet. I made coffee. sat at the kitchen table, and called the number Linda had texted me the night before. Angela Rodriguez answered on the third ring. Rodriguez Law, this is Angela. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Margaret Thompson. My sister Linda Carter in Phoenix referred me. I need help with a situation. Linda's a good friend. Any sister of hers is someone I'll help. Tell me what's going on. I told her everything. The marriage to Richard. David's transformation. The conversation I'd overheard. The plan to put me in assisted living and sell my house. And then I told her about Aunt Josephine's inheritance. $8 million? Angela's voice changed, sharp, focused. And your husband doesn't know? No one knows except my sister Linda and now you. Mrs. Thompson, this changes everything. They think you're helpless, dependent, easy to manage. When really, you're wealthier than your husband. Exactly. I'm assuming you want a divorce? Yes. And I want to make sure David understands there are consequences for treating his mother like garbage. Ohio is an equitable distribution state. In a divorce, assets acquired during marriage are split fairly. But inheritances received by one spouse are generally separate property. That $8 million is yours alone. Richard has no claim to it. Good. However, you've been married 15 years. You're 70. He's 78. You'd likely be entitled to spousal support even without the inheritance. With it, you don't need his money. But we can still make him pay. I want him to pay. Not because I need the money. Because he needs to understand what he threw away. I like the way you think. Can you come to my office tomorrow? We'll start paperwork. Get everything in order. The sooner we file, the better. Tomorrow. What time? 10 a.m. My office is in German Village. On 3rd Street. I hung up feeling lighter, stronger, like I'd taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. David left that afternoon. January 2nd, heading back to Cleveland. He hugged me goodbye, casual, distant. Thanks for dinner last night, Mom. The pot roast was great. You're welcome. Take care of yourself. And take care of Richard. He needs you, he needs you. Not you need each other, not you deserve care too. Just that Richard needs me. My value measured only in what I could do for someone else. I'll take care of myself from now on, I said quietly. What? Nothing. Drive safely, he left. Didn't look back. Didn't notice anything different about me. Still saw what he'd always seen. The invisible woman in the background. Richard spent the afternoon watching football. I sat in the kitchen with my laptop, looking at the trust documents, the account statements. $8,200,000. That's what Aunt Jo had left me. More money than I'd ever imagined having. I Googled Angela Rodriguez, found her website, reviews. She specialized in divorce for women over 60. Had a reputation for being tough, uncompromising, exactly what I needed. January 3rd. I told Richard I had a doctor's appointment. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer to come, just nodded. Went back to his iPad. Angela's office was in a restored Victorian house in German Village. Elegant, professional. Her assistant offered coffee. I waited in a room with leather chairs and law books. Angela came out 10 minutes later, 50-something, confident, sharp suit. Firm handshake. Mrs. Thompson, come in. Her office was impressive. Big desk, windows overlooking 3rd Street, walls covered in diplomas and awards. This woman knew what she was doing. Let's talk strategy, Angela said. You want a divorce. You want to protect your inheritance. You want Richard to understand he made a mistake. Correct? Yes, and your son. What do you want regarding David? I want him to know he can't treat his mother like she's disposable, that there are consequences, but I don't want to completely destroy him. He's still my son. Fair. Here's what I'm thinking. We file for divorce immediately. Cite irreconcilable differences. We ask for the house in Worthington. It was purchased during the marriage, so it's marital property. We also ask for spousal support, not because you need it, but because you're entitled to it under Ohio law. How much support? Given Richard's income from his retirement accounts and Social Security, probably $3,000 to $4,000 a month. For life or until you remarry? I'm never remarrying, Angela smiled. Then for life. Now the inheritance stays completely separate. We don't mention it in the filing. It's not marital property. He has no right to know about it. When it comes out later, and it will, he'll realize exactly what he lost. What about the house? They wanted to sell it to put me in assisted living. Over my dead body. That house is marital property. You have every right to it. We'll argue that you should keep it as your primary residence. Richard can find his own place. He won't like that. He doesn't have to like it. He just has to accept it. This is the consequence of treating you like you're worthless. We spent 2 hours going over everything. Assets, debts, timeline of the marriage, Richard's behavior. The conversation I'd overheard? Angela took notes, asked questions. Built a case. When do you want to tell him? She asked. Not yet. I need a few more weeks. I need to prepare. Get my documents together. Maybe find a place to stay temporarily when this blows up. Smart. Take your time. But not too much time. The longer you wait, the more likely they'll try to move forward with their plan. I left Angela's office feeling powerful, in control. For the first time in 70 years, I was making decisions about my own life, not waiting for permission, not asking what Richard thought, just acting. Carol met me for lunch at North Star Cafe in Clintonville. I told her everything, the conversation I'd overheard, Angela, the plan. Oh my God, Margaret, you're really doing this? I'm really doing this. How do you feel? Terrified, excited, angry, free, all of it at once. When are you telling Richard? Soon. I need to get some things in order first. Make sure I have copies of all important documents, bank statements, tax returns, everything Angela needs. Do you have a place to go? When you tell him and it gets ugly? Not yet. Come stay with me and Steve. We have the guest room. You can stay as long as you need. Carol, I can't impose. You're not imposing. You're my best friend, and I want to be there when you finally stand up for yourself. Please, let me help. I agreed. Having Carol's house as a backup made everything feel more possible, more real. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly prepared. I made copies of everything. Tax returns, bank statements, the deed to the house, Richard's retirement account statements. All of it. I saved it all on a flash drive. Gave a copy to Angela. Kept a copy at Carol's house. I opened a new bank account. Just in my name, at a different bank. Transferred $50,000 from the inheritance trust into it. Emergency money. Just in case. Richard noticed nothing. Was completely oblivious. Still expected dinner at 6. Still expected me to manage his medications. Still treated me like the invisible woman who existed to serve him. David called Richard twice during those 2 weeks. They talked for an hour each time. David called me once. 5-minute conversation. How are you, Mom? Fine. Great. Tell Richard I'll talk to him Thursday. On January 20th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I made a decision. It was time. I'd prepared everything. Had everything in place. Had a lawyer. Had a plan. Had $8 million they knew nothing about. That evening, I made Richard's favorite dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes. Green beans, his comfort food. The last meal I'd ever cook for him. We ate in silence. He didn't compliment the food. Didn't thank me, just ate. Scrolled on his iPad. Existed in the same room without really seeing me. After dinner, I cleared the table. Loaded the dishwasher. Wiped down the counters. Then I sat down across from him in the living room. Richard, we need to talk. About what? He didn't look up from his iPad. About our marriage. About my future. About the conversation you had with David on December 30th. That got his attention. He looked up. What conversation? The one where you called me useless. Where you planned to put me in Brookdale and sell this house. Where you and my son discussed disposing of me like I was a burden you needed to handle. His face went pale. You heard that? Every word. And it was the last time either of you will ever underestimate me. Margaret, you misunderstood. We were just discussing options, possibilities. We weren't actually planning anything. Don't lie to me. I heard exactly what you said, what you both said, and now you're going to hear what I have to say. I pulled out the divorce papers Angela had prepared. Set them on the coffee table between us. I'm divorcing you. I've hired a lawyer, Angela Rodriguez. You'll be served officially in a few days, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. You're divorcing me? Over a conversation you weren't supposed to hear. I'm divorcing you because you see me as useless. Because you plan to sell my house and put me away. Because you've spent 15 years making me feel invisible. This conversation just proved what I've known for a long time. You don't value me. You don't respect me. You don't see me as a person. That's not true. It is true. And I'm done. I'm done being invisible. Done being treated like I only matter when I'm useful to someone else. Done with all of it. Where will you go? You have nothing. No money, no job. You need me. And that's when I smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in years. That's where you're wrong, Richard. I don't need you at all. I never did. I just thought I did. But I was wrong. And you're about to find out just how wrong you were about me. I stood up. Walked to the stairs. Turned back. Oh, and one more thing. You wanted to sell this house? File that away as a dream that's never happening. This house is mine. You'll be the one finding a new place to live. The useless old woman is keeping her home. I went upstairs. Packed a bag. Called Carol, I told him. I'm coming over. The useless old woman is leaving. I heard Carol laugh. Come on over. The guest room is ready. And I can't wait to hear everything. I walked out of that house in Worthington with one suitcase. Left Richard sitting in the living room. Stunned. Confused. Still not understanding what had just happened. But he'd understand soon enough. When the divorce papers arrived. When I fought for the house. When he realized I wasn't the helpless woman he thought I was. And someday, maybe, he'd understand that calling a woman useless is the quickest way to discover just how valuable she really was. Richard was served divorce papers on January 23rd. A process server showed up at the house in Worthington at 9 a.m., handed him an envelope, asked him to sign. He called me 20 minutes later. I was at Carol's house, drinking coffee. Finally, sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Margaret, what the hell is this? Divorce papers. I told you I was filing. You were serious? I thought you were just upset, that you'd cool down and come home. I'm not coming home. That house will be mine after the divorce. You'll be the one leaving. You can't take the house. That's my home. It's marital property, and I have an excellent lawyer who thinks I have every right to it, especially after you planned to sell it and put me in a facility. We weren't actually going to do that. It was just talk. Planning for possibilities. It was planning to dispose of me. There's a difference, he tried reasoning, tried apologizing, tried the same manipulation that had worked for 15 years. But I wasn't the same woman anymore, wasn't listening, wasn't bending. My lawyer will be in touch about asset division and spousal support. Goodbye, Richard, I hung up. Blocked his number. That chapter was closed. David called 2 days later. Richard had told him. He was furious. Mom, what are you doing? You're divorcing Richard? Over nothing? Over being called useless. Over being planned for disposal. Over 15 years of being invisible. He takes care of you financially. Gives you a home. You have it good and you're throwing it away over hurt feelings? I'm leaving because I deserve better than a man who sees me as a burden. And I'm disappointed that my son sees me the same way. I don't see you as a burden. I just think you're being unreasonable. Emotional. You're 70 years old, Mom. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I'm going to live my life. On my terms, without men who think my only value is in serving them. This is crazy. You're making a huge mistake. The mistake was staying as long as I did. Goodbye, David. I hung up. Didn't cry. Didn't doubt. Just felt free. Angela called that afternoon. Richard's lawyer reached out. Wants to negotiate. He's offering you the house plus $2,000 a month spousal support if you'll agree quickly. What do you think? I think we can do better. We're asking for $4,000, and we're not agreeing quickly. Let him sweat. Perfect. By the end of January, Richard was panicking, realizing I wasn't coming back. That this was real. That the useless old woman had actually left, and I was at Carol's house, sleeping well, eating well, planning my future. The future I'd thought was over at 70, but it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Settlement negotiations dragged through February. Richard's lawyer kept trying to lowball. Angela kept pushing back. He's offering the house and $2,500 a month. Final offer. Not good enough, Angela said. We want $4,000. He can afford it. His retirement accounts are substantial. Mrs. Thompson doesn't need the money. She should be grateful for anything. Mrs. Thompson is entitled to maintain the standard of living she had during the marriage. $4,000 monthly, non-negotiable. By mid-February, Richard agreed. The house would be mine. $4,000 monthly spousal support, for life or until I remarried. Division of other assets would be minimal since the house was the major marital property. The divorce would be final in 60 days. Then came the disclosure requirements. Both parties had to disclose all assets. Bank accounts, investments, property, everything. I filled out my forms truthfully, listed the inheritance from Aunt Josephine. $8,200,000 in a trust, solely in my name. Angela filed the paperwork on February 20th. Richard's lawyer called Angela the next day. Is this accurate? Your client has $8 million? Completely accurate. Inheritance from her aunt? Separate property, not subject to division. Richard had no idea. That's not my problem. Or my client's. Richard called me that evening. I'd unblocked his number temporarily to handle divorce logistics. $8 million? You have $8 million and you're taking my house and $4,000 a month. The house is marital property. The spousal support is what I'm legally entitled to under Ohio law. The inheritance is mine. You have no claim to it. When did you get this money? February 2024, almost a year ago. And you never told me? Why would I? You'd already made it clear what you thought of me. That I was useless, a burden. Why would I share anything with someone who saw me that way? If I'd known you had money, everything would have been different. Exactly. That's why I didn't tell you. Because I wanted to see who you really were. And you showed me. You and David both showed me. He was quiet. Then, does David know? Not yet, but he will. When he realizes the mother he called useless is wealthier than both of you combined. The divorce was finalized on March 28th. I got the house. $4,000 monthly. My freedom. Richard got his retirement accounts and the realization that he'd thrown away a wife who was worth $8 million. David found out in early April. Called me. Stunned. Mom, is it true? You have $8 million? Yes, and you never told us? You never asked what I was worth. You just assumed I was worthless. There's a difference. I never said you were worthless. You said I was useless. You agreed with Richard. You planned to put me away. Don't rewrite history now that you know I have money. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Yes, you were. And now you'll live with that. I hung up. Changed my will. Everything to charity. David would inherit nothing. The son who'd called his mother useless would get exactly what he thought she was worth. Nothing. Moved back into the house in Worthington in early April. It felt different now. Lighter. It was truly mine. No Richard, no expectations. No invisible weight on my shoulders. Carol helped me redecorate. We painted walls, rearranged furniture, got rid of things that reminded me of Richard. Made the space feel like mine instead of ours. How does it feel? Carol asked one afternoon. We were painting the living room a soft blue. Richard had always insisted on beige. It feels like breathing. Like I've been holding my breath for 15 years and I finally exhaled. My sister Linda flew in from Phoenix in May. Stayed a week. We sat on my back porch drinking wine, talking about everything. About Mom, about choices, about what it means to finally choose yourself. I'm so proud of you, Margaret. At 70, starting completely over, I'm not starting over. I'm starting for the first time. Everything before was living someone else's life. This is mine. I joined a book club at the Worthington Library. Started taking painting classes at the community center. Signed up for a travel group for women over 65. We were planning a trip to Italy in September, Italy. I'd never been. Tom couldn't afford it. Richard didn't want to go. Now I was going, by myself, with a group of women who were also learning that life doesn't end at 70. David tried reaching out several times. Texts, calls, emails. I didn't respond. He'd made his choice. Now he could live with it. Richard moved to a condo in Dublin. Smaller, cheaper. All he could afford now with the spousal support payments. His friends from the golf club stopped calling. Word had spread. He'd lost a wealthy wife by treating her like garbage. Nobody respected that. In June, I did something I'd never done. I bought myself a gift, a beautiful gift. I walked into Easton Town Center, into Tiffany, and I bought myself a diamond necklace. Not as expensive as the one Richard had considered buying. Just a simple pendant, beautiful, mine. The saleswoman smiled when I tried it on. Special occasion? Very special. I'm celebrating my independence. Congratulations. It looks beautiful on you. I wore it out of the store. Felt it against my skin. A reminder that I was valuable. That I deserved beautiful things. That I didn't need a man to give them to me. Carol threw me a birthday party in late June. I turned 71. Small gathering. Just close friends. Women who'd supported me. Who'd watched me disappear and celebrated when I came back. What's the best thing about being 71? Someone asked. I thought about it. About the divorce. The house. The money. The freedom. the life I was building. The best thing is knowing that it's never too late. Never too late to choose yourself, to demand respect, to walk away from people who make you feel small. I wasted 70 years learning that lesson, but I learned it. And now I'm living it. Everyone clapped. Carol hugged me. Linda wiped tears, and I stood in my own home, surrounded by people who valued me, wearing a diamond necklace I'd bought myself, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades, happy, genuinely, completely happy. At 71, my life had finally begun. It's October 2025 now. 10 months since I overheard that conversation. 9 months since I left. 7 months since the divorce was finalized. I'm 71 years old, living alone in my house in Worthington, Ohio. And I've never been happier. I just got back from Italy last week. 2 weeks in Tuscany with my women's travel group. We toured vineyards, ate incredible food, walked ancient streets, laughed until we cried. I was the oldest one in the group, and I had more energy than women 20 years younger. My house is exactly how I want it. Blue walls, comfortable furniture, books everywhere, plants on every windowsill, a space that reflects who I am, not who someone else needed me to be. I see Carol twice a week. Linda visits from Phoenix every few months. My book club meets Thursdays. Painting class is Tuesdays. I'm learning watercolors. I'm terrible at it, but I love it. Richard lives in his condo in Dublin, alone. His friends distanced themselves when they learned how he'd treated me, how he'd planned to dispose of me. People don't respect men who call their wives useless. He tried reaching out last month, asked if we could talk, have coffee, discuss things. I said no. There's nothing to discuss. He made his choice. Now he lives with it. David sends occasional emails, birthday cards, tries to rebuild what he destroyed. But you can't unring a bell. You can't call your mother useless and expect her to forget. I respond politely, briefly. But the relationship we had, that's gone. He threw it away when he chose Richard's money over his mother's dignity. I changed my will officially in August. Everything goes to charity. Women's shelters, organizations that help older women escape abusive situations, places that understand that financial abuse is real. That being called useless is a form of violence. David will inherit nothing, not because I'm cruel, but because he needs to understand that people have value beyond what they can do for you, that mothers aren't disposable, that calling someone useless has consequences. People ask me sometimes if I'm lonely, if I regret leaving at 70, if I wish I'd stayed for the security. The answer is always no. I'm not lonely. I'm alone. There's a difference. Lonely is being with someone who makes you invisible. Alone is having space to finally see yourself. I don't regret leaving. I regret not leaving sooner. I regret 50 years of making myself small. But I don't regret claiming my last years for myself and security. I have $8 million. I have a house I own outright. I have $4,000 coming in monthly. I have more security now than I ever had, depending on men who saw me as a burden. If you're listening to this and you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you think it's too late to leave, hear this. It's never too late. Never too late to choose yourself. To demand respect. To walk away from people who make you feel worthless. I spent 70 years being what everyone else needed. The good daughter. The good wife. The good mother. And where did it get me? Called useless by my husband and son. Now I'm being what I need. And it's the best decision I ever made. My husband and son called me a useless old woman. But what happened next shocked them. I left. I divorced. I kept my house. I took my money. And I built a life that's completely mine. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old. And I'm living proof that it's never too late to reclaim your life. Drop your city or country in the comments. Let me know this story reached you. And if you're a woman who's ever been called useless, know this. You're not. You never were. They just couldn't see your value. Subscribe for more stories about women who chose themselves. No matter their age, because that's what we do. We survive. We leave. We thrive. And we show the world that underestimating older women is the biggest mistake anyone can make. Never let someone else define your worth. Especially not at 70. Especially not when you have 8 million reasons to prove them wrong.